My name is Bryan Coleman, 34 years old with two amazing kids, Emma and Jake. Christmas morning in Chicago always meant one thing: our family brunch at my parents' house. The kids were buzzing with excitement as we trudged through the fresh snow, gifts in hand. When we knocked, my mother appeared at the window. Her smile faded instantly. She cracked open the door just enough to say those words I never expected. "Today is not a good day for your kind of energy." My children looked up at me, confusion in their eyes. I simply took their hands and said, "Let's go get pancakes." If you're watching this from a place where family has let you down, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to create your own holiday joy. Life as a single father wasn't what I had planned, but it became my reality 2 years ago when my ex-wife Sophia received an offer to head the marketing department for a tech giant in San Francisco. Our marriage had been struggling for a while, but that job offer was the final push. She wanted to move, I wanted to stay in Chicago where my architecture firm was established. We tried to make it work long distance, but eventually the divorce papers arrived. Sophia visits the kids a few times a year and video calls weekly, but the day-to-day raising of Emma and Jake falls to me. Emma, now 7, is fiercely independent with a creative spirit that reminds me of myself at her age. 5-year-old Jake is sensitive and thoughtful, always noticing when someone seems sad. They're good kids, and I've done everything in my power to give them stability despite their world being turned upside down by the divorce. Christmas had always been special in my family. My mother, Patricia, a retired English teacher, transformed her home into something straight out of a Hallmark movie. My father, Thomas, who spent 40 years as an accountant, would grumble about the expense but secretly loved every minute of it. The annual Christmas brunch was legendary among extended family and close friends. My sister Amanda and brother Michael would be there with their families, and for one day, everything felt perfect. This year, the kids had spent weeks preparing homemade gifts. Emma had painted watercolor bookmarks for everyone, while Jake had helped me bake cinnamon ornaments. The night before Christmas, we stayed up late baking cookies for Santa and preparing a special plate for the family gathering. The kitchen counter was dusted with flour as Emma carefully measured ingredients and Jake enthusiastically mixed the dough, occasionally sneaking bites when he thought I wasn't looking. "Do you think Grandma will like the star cookies best or the trees?" Jake had asked, his face serious with concentration as he sprinkled green sugar on a misshapen tree cookie. "Grandma loves anything you make," I assured him, though recently I wasn't so certain. The tensions with my family had been building over the past year. My mother increasingly criticized my parenting choices, from allowing Emma to cut her hair into a short bob, "Girls should have long hair, Bryan. That's just how it is," to enrolling Jake in dance classes along with soccer, "Boys need to be boys." "You're confusing him." Each visit became more strained, with my parents exchanging looks whenever I made a parenting decision they disagreed with. 2 months ago at a Sunday dinner, my mother had said pointedly, "I just worry about these children without a proper female influence. All this modern parenting isn't what they need." I had bitten my tongue, not wanting to argue in front of the kids, but the comment stung. I was doing my best, and the children were thriving despite the challenges. My relationship with my sister Amanda had also become complicated. 6 months ago, she lost her job at a marketing firm and struggled to find new employment. When she couldn't afford her rent, I helped her find an affordable apartment in a decent neighborhood and co-signed her lease. Our parents had offered to let her move back home, but at 32, Amanda valued her independence. My mother viewed my help as enabling Amanda rather than pushing her to accept their offer. "She needs to learn responsibility," my mother had said. Moving back home would teach her to be more careful with money. I disagreed. Amanda needed support, not punishment, during a difficult time. This fundamental difference in approach caused multiple tense family dinners, with my father staying silent and my brother Michael attempting to smooth things over as usual. Despite all this, I held on to hope that Christmas would soften the rough edges of our family relationships. The holiday spirit had always brought out the best in everyone, and I wanted my children to experience the magic of our family traditions. Christmas morning dawned with a fresh blanket of snow across Chicago. Emma burst into my room at 6:30, with Jake trailing behind clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Santa came. Dad, wake up! Emma bounced on the bed while Jake climbed up more carefully, his eyes wide with excitement. We spent the morning opening gifts by our modest tree in the apartment. Emma received the art set she'd been hoping for, and Jake got a dinosaur encyclopedia that made him squeal with delight. After the presents, we had our traditional breakfast of French toast with strawberries, a tradition I'd started after the divorce to create something special that was just ours. As we got dressed for the family brunch, Emma twirled in her new red dress with white polka dots. Jake struggled with the buttons on his green shirt until I knelt down to help him. "Will Uncle Michael's dog be there?" Jake asked. He adored my brother's golden retriever, Max. "I think so, buddy," I said, helping him with his last button. "And Aunt Amanda said she has a special surprise for you both." The drive to my parents' suburban home took 40 minutes. We passed houses decorated with twinkling lights and inflatable Santas. Emma and Jake sang Christmas carols from the backseat, occasionally arguing about lyrics. I joined in, partly to keep their spirits high and partly to calm my own nerves. I couldn't shake the feeling that today might be difficult, but I pushed it aside. It was Christmas after all. A time for family and forgiveness. "Let's practice the song we want to sing for Grandma and Grandpa," I suggested, and the kids launched into an enthusiastic if slightly off-key rendition of Jingle Bells. As we turned onto my parents' street, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe today would be the day when the tensions eased. Maybe the sight of Emma and Jake's joyful faces would remind my parents of what really mattered. Maybe this Christmas would bring our fractured family back together. As we pulled up to my parents' two-story colonial home, I noticed more cars than expected in the driveway. My brother Michael's SUV was there, as was my sister Amanda's blue compact. But there were two additional vehicles I didn't recognize. Perhaps my parents had invited neighbors or friends from church, though that wasn't typical for our family Christmas brunch. "Looks like everyone's already here," I told the kids as I helped them out of the car. Each child clutched their carefully wrapped presents, eager to distribute them. Jake carried the tin of homemade cookies we'd stayed up late baking, his face a picture of concentration as he tried not to drop anything. The neighborhood was picture perfect, like something from a Christmas card. Fresh snow covered the lawns, and nearly every house displayed a wreath on the door and lights strung along the rooflines. My parents' home was traditionally decorated with simple white lights and real pine garlands. My mother considered inflatable decorations tacky and colored lights too carnival. Emma skipped ahead up the cleared walkway while Jake stayed close to me, suddenly shy as he always became before seeing relatives. When we reached the front door, I could hear laughter and conversation from inside. The delicious smell of my mother's famous cinnamon rolls wafted out, making my stomach growl. I hadn't eaten much breakfast, too nervous about the family gathering. "Ready?" I asked the kids and they nodded eagerly. I knocked firmly and called out, "Merry Christmas," in the cheerful voice I reserved for potentially awkward family gatherings. After a moment, I saw movement through the decorative oval window in the center of the door. My mother's face appeared, her expression initially neutral. When she registered it was us, something changed in her eyes. Her smile disappeared and her lips pressed into a thin line. The door opened just a few inches, not the wide welcome we expected. My mother stood there in her Christmas apron, not inviting us in. "Today's not a good day for your kind of energy," she said quietly but firmly. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of the living room. My father sat in his armchair. Amanda was on the couch next to a man I didn't recognize. Michael and his wife Jennifer stood near the fireplace, drinks in hand. The conversation had stopped, everyone looking toward the door. "What do you mean?" I asked, genuinely confused. "It's Christmas. We always have brunch together." "We have a situation we're dealing with," my mother replied, her voice tight. "It would be better if you came another time." Emma tugged at my coat. Daddy, why won't Grandma let us in? I want to give her my present. My mother's eyes flickered to Emma, then back to me. For a second I thought I saw regret, but it vanished quickly. I'm sorry, Emma. Grandma has some grown-up things to discuss with your aunt and uncle today. Jake's lower lip trembled. He'd been looking forward to this for weeks. I felt a wave of anger rising but forced it down. Creating a scene would only make things worse for the kids. It's okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We'll see Grandma and Grandpa another day. I turned to the kids, summoning a smile I didn't feel. How about we go get some special Christmas pancakes instead? My mother started to say something else but seemed to think better of it. She simply nodded and closed the door. I heard the lock click. We stood there for a moment, the three of us, on the front step of what had once been my childhood home. Snow began to fall again, light flakes settling on the children's hats. Emma looked up at me with confusion in her eyes. Jake clutched his cookie tin tighter, his small shoulders slumped in disappointment. Come on, munchkins, I said with forced cheerfulness. I know a place that makes pancakes shaped like reindeer. As we walked back to the car, Emma asked the question I was dreading. Why doesn't Grandma want to see us, Daddy? Did we do something wrong? My heart broke a little. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Grandma and Grandpa just have some grown-up problems they're dealing with today. But it's Christmas, Jake said softly, his concept of the holiday incompatible with what had just happened. Yes, it is, I agreed, helping them into the car. And we're going to have a wonderful Christmas together, just the three of us. Once they were buckled in and I closed the driver's door, I allowed myself a moment. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I took several deep breaths. I wouldn't cry. Not now. Not when the kids needed me to be strong. I started the car and turned up the Christmas music, asking the kids to help me find a good pancake place on my phone. As we drove away, I saw the curtain in my parents' front window move slightly. Someone was watching us leave. The tears started when we were halfway to the diner. Not mine but Jake's. Quiet sniffles from the backseat that he was trying to hide. Then Emma's voice, trying to comfort him but shaking with her own unshed tears. It's okay, Jake. We'll have fun without them. I pulled into a parking lot and turned around to face them. Hey, look at me, both of you. Their sad little faces nearly undid me, but I pushed on. Today didn't go like we expected, but we're still going to have an amazing Christmas. Sometimes people, even grandparents, have bad days or make mistakes. That doesn't mean they don't love us. I wasn't sure if that last part was true anymore, but my children needed reassurance. We found a diner called Molly's that was open on Christmas. It was surprisingly busy, filled with people who, for whatever reason, weren't having traditional family gatherings. Our waitress, Amy, wore felt reindeer antlers and had a kind smile that widened when she saw the kids' sad faces. Let me guess, she said, leading us to a booth by the window. Change of Christmas plans. Something like that, I replied. Well, you're in luck. Our Christmas special is chocolate chip pancakes with whipped cream and candy cane pieces. Guaranteed to cure any holiday blues. The kids perked up a bit at this, and soon they were coloring on the paper placemats Amy had provided. I ordered coffee for myself and hot chocolate for them, along with the special pancakes. As they drew and quietly discussed whether Santa had visited the other children at the diner, I tried to make sense of what had happened. Why would my mother turn us away on Christmas? What situation could be so important that she would disappoint her grandchildren? The extra cars in the driveway suggested some kind of gathering. An emergency family meeting. But about what and why wasn't I included? The pancakes arrived, elaborately decorated to look like reindeer faces with chocolate chip eyes, whipped cream antlers, and bacon strip smiles. The kids' eyes widened and Jake actually laughed, a sound that eased some of the tightness in my chest. These are way better than Grandma's cinnamon rolls, Emma declared loyally after her first bite, and I had to smile. Different, not better, I corrected gently. We don't need to say negative things about Grandma's cooking. Even if she was mean to us, Emma asked with the directness only children can manage. I paused, considering my words carefully. Even then. We can be upset with someone's actions without saying unkind things about them. Jake looked up from his pancakes. Will we go back to Grandma's house later today? I don't think so, buddy. Not today. But we'll have our own special Christmas at home. As the kids ate, occasionally offering me bites, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. I checked it discreetly. 3 missed calls from my brother Michael. To understand what happened that Christmas morning, you need to know about my family's history. I grew up in that same colonial house, the oldest of 3 children, raised by parents who believed strongly in tradition and appearances. My father Thomas worked 60-hour weeks as an accountant, leaving the child rearing primarily to my mother Patricia. She ran our home with the precision and authority of the English teacher she was, with clear rules and expectations that were rarely open to discussion. As a child, I was called sensitive and too imaginative because I preferred drawing to sports and asked questions about why things had to be done a certain way. My mother believed in gender roles and social norms that felt restrictive even in the 90s. Boys didn't cry. Girls were ladylike. Children were seen and not heard when adults were speaking. Bryan, stop questioning everything, my mother would say when I asked why I couldn't take both art and computer science instead of football. Some things are just the way they are. My sister Amanda, 2 years younger than me, learned early to seek our parents' approval. She was the perfect daughter, joining the activities my mother approved of, wearing the clothes my mother selected, dating the type of boys my parents considered appropriate. My brother Michael, 5 years my junior, became the family peacekeeper. Whenever tensions rose, he would crack a joke or change the subject. He became adept at reading the room and diffusing situations before they escalated. My father rarely contradicted my mother. When I would appeal to him hoping for an ally, he would shrug and say, "You know how your mother feels about this. Let's not rock the boat." Over time, I learned to keep my thoughts to myself and follow the path of least resistance, at least until I went to college and discovered there were other ways to live and think. When I met Sophia in my 20s, she was everything my mother wouldn't approve of, outspoken and ambitious with progressive ideas about family and gender roles. We married despite my mother's thinly veiled disapproval. When Sophia and I decided she would keep her last name, my mother commented that it showed a lack of commitment to the family unit. After the children were born, the tensions increased. My parents had strong opinions about everything from breastfeeding to preschool selection. We managed an uneasy peace by limiting visits and politely ignoring unsolicited advice. When Sophia and I divorced, my mother saw it as confirmation of her doubts. "I'm not surprised," she said when I broke the news. She never seemed committed to being a proper wife and mother. The comment stung especially because Sophia had been a devoted mother who made the painful decision to accept a career opportunity that would financially secure our children's future, even if it meant seeing them less often. Since the divorce, my mother had become increasingly critical of my parenting. When Emma wanted to play soccer instead of taking ballet, my mother blamed me for encouraging her tomboy tendencies. When Jake showed interest in cooking, she warned me not to make him too soft. Every visit included at least one comment about how the children needed a woman's touch or how I was too permissive. The Thanksgiving before this Christmas had been particularly difficult. We gathered at my parents' house and my mother spent the entire meal making comments about Emma's short haircut, which the 7-year-old had proudly chosen herself. "Such a shame to cut off those beautiful curls," my mother said for the 3rd time as Emma pushed food around her plate. "Don't you miss your pretty long hair, sweetheart?" "I like it short," Emma mumbled. "It doesn't get tangled." "But it makes you look like a little boy," my mother persisted. "Don't you want to look like a pretty girl?" I saw Emma's shoulders slump and intervened. "Mom, Emma's haircut is her choice and she looks beautiful. Please stop bringing it up." "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," my mother replied. "Children need guidance. They don't always know what's best for them." Later, when Jake excitedly told everyone about his dance recital, my father exchanged a look with my mother. "Wouldn't you rather play basketball, son?" my father asked. "I could teach you to shoot hoops." "I like dance," Jake said quietly. "And basketball too." Dance is fine for now, my mother added, but you'll want to focus on more boyish activities as you get older. I had had enough. Mom, Dad, the kids are happy and well adjusted. I'd appreciate if you would support their interests instead of trying to force them into narrow gender roles. The table fell silent. My mother's face tightened. Well, I see Sophia's progressive ideas have really taken hold. I just hope these children turn out all right with such modern parenting. Amanda quickly changed the subject, while Michael shot me a sympathetic look. After dinner, Michael pulled me aside. They're from a different generation, Bryan. They don't understand how things have changed. That's no excuse for making the kids feel bad about themselves, I argued. Michael sighed. I know. Just try to let it go. For the sake of family harmony. That was Michael's mantra. Family harmony above all. Don't rock the boat. Accept the subtle digs and underhanded comments for the sake of peace. Amanda's financial troubles added another layer of complication. After losing her marketing job, she struggled to find new employment in a competitive field. When she couldn't make rent, our parents immediately suggested she move back home. It would be the sensible thing to do, my mother insisted during a family dinner. Save money and get back on your feet. But Amanda, at 32, valued her independence. I can't move back home, Mom. I need my own space. Pride comes before a fall, my mother warned. When Amanda mentioned looking at cheaper apartments in less desirable neighborhoods, I offered to help. I knew of a decent building in a safe area with reasonable rent. The catch was that Amanda's credit had taken a hit during her unemployment, so she needed a cosigner for the lease. I'll cosign, I offered. And I can help you move. My parents were visibly displeased. My mother argued that I was enabling Amanda's impractical lifestyle, while my father questioned whether I could afford to take on the financial risk given my situation as a single parent. I'm trying to help her maintain her independence, I explained. Just like you helped me when I was starting out. That was different, my father said. You were married with a solid job. The implication that Amanda wasn't responsible enough to deserve help stung both of us. Despite their disapproval, I helped Amanda find a one-bedroom apartment in Rogers Park and co-signed her lease. She moved in 4 months before Christmas and seemed to be doing well, even starting to date someone new named Scott. The tension with my family continued in weekly phone calls that became increasingly strained. The last conversation with my mother, a week before Christmas, had ended with her reluctant invitation to brunch. We'll see you at 10 on Christmas morning, she said, her tone making it clear this was an obligation rather than a joyful gathering. Please make sure the children are properly dressed. Your Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert might stop by. Despite everything, I had hoped that Christmas would soften her heart. That seeing the children's excitement would remind her of what family should be about. That the spirit of the season might bring us all closer together. I couldn't have been more wrong. The kids were halfway through their Christmas pancakes when my phone rang again. Michael's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated but knew I needed to answer. I should take this, I told the kids. It's Uncle Michael. I'll be right back. I stepped a few feet away from the table but kept the kids in my sight. Hey Michael, Merry Christmas, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral despite the hurt and anger I felt. What the hell, Bryan? Michael's voice was uncharacteristically harsh. Why did you cancel your sister's lease? I was so taken aback that for a moment I couldn't speak. What? I didn't cancel anything. Don't play dumb, Michael snapped. Amanda got an eviction notice yesterday. The property manager said the lease guarantor requested termination. That's you. Michael, I swear I didn't do this. I had no idea. Right, he said sarcastically. It's just a coincidence that after you get into an argument with Amanda about her boyfriend, suddenly she's being evicted right after Christmas. My mind was reeling. I hadn't canceled the lease. And while Amanda and I had disagreed about her new boyfriend Scott 2 weeks ago, it wasn't a major argument. Michael, listened to me. I did not cancel Amanda's lease. There must be some mistake. Well, everyone here thinks you did it out of spite, Michael said. Mom and Dad are furious. Amanda's been crying all morning. That's why Mom didn't want you to come in, she was afraid there'd be a huge scene in front of the kids. I glanced over at Emma and Jake, who were decorating their remaining pancakes with extra whipped cream, oblivious to my conversation. So instead of asking me about it first, everyone just assumed I would do something that vindictive. On Christmas. Is that what you think of me? Michael sighed. Look, I'm just telling you what's happening here. We're having an emergency family meeting about how to help Amanda since she has 30 days to find a new place. Mom and Dad are offering to let her move in temporarily. And no one thought to call me before now. To ask for my side. Amanda tried calling you last night but said it went to voicemail. I checked my call history. There were no missed calls from Amanda. That's not true. She never called me. Whatever, Bryan. The point is, you've put Amanda in a terrible position. The property manager confirmed the cancellation came from you as the guarantor. That's impossible, I insisted. I need to talk to the property manager myself. Good luck with that on Christmas Day, Michael said. Anyway, I just called to ask how you could do this to your own sister. I thought you were better than that. Before I could respond, Michael hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, completely stunned. The accusation was so absurd that I couldn't process it. Why would I cancel Amanda's lease? How could they believe I would do such a thing? I tried calling the property management company, but as expected on Christmas Day, I got a recording. I left an urgent message asking them to call me back about Amanda Coleman's lease, emphasizing that I had not authorized any cancellation. When I returned to the table, the kids immediately sensed something was wrong. Are you okay, Dad? Emma asked, her perceptiveness sometimes startling me. You look upset. I forced a smile. Just a little grown-up problem, sweetie. Nothing for you to worry about. Was Uncle Michael mad? Jake asked, always sensitive to emotions. I considered how to explain the situation in a way that wouldn't vilify their grandparents or aunt, despite my own hurt and anger. There's a misunderstanding about something I supposedly did, but I didn't do it, I explained. Sometimes people jump to conclusions before they have all the facts. Emma tilted her head. Like when Ms. Peterson thought I took Lily's bracelet because it was in my cubby, but Lily actually put it there herself and forgot. Exactly like that, I said, grateful for her insight. Did you tell them you didn't do it? Jake asked, his 5-year-old logic cutting to the heart of the matter. I did, buddy, but they're still upset. They need some time to figure out what really happened. Emma studied my face. Why don't they believe you, Dad? Don't they trust you? Her question hit me hard. Why indeed? After all these years, my family was so ready to think the worst of me. So quick to believe I would do something cruel and vindictive, especially at Christmas. Sometimes, I said carefully, when people are upset or scared, they look for someone to blame. It's easier than dealing with the unknown. As we finished our meal, I thought back to my recent interaction with Amanda. 2 weeks ago, she had brought her new boyfriend, Scott, to dinner at my apartment after the kids were in bed. Scott worked in sales and had an aggressive confidence that immediately put me on edge. Throughout dinner, I noticed how he spoke for Amanda several times and made comments about getting her life back on track that seemed controlling rather than supportive. After Scott left to bring the car around, I expressed my concerns to Amanda. He seems a little intense, I said carefully. How long have you been dating? 3 months, Amanda replied defensively. And he's been incredibly supportive during my job search. I'm glad, but does he always speak for you like that? Amanda's face hardened. Not everyone can be as perfect as you think you are, Bryan. Scott has his rough edges, but he cares about me. I just want to make sure you're happy, I said. What I'd be happy with is if my family stopped judging every decision I make, she snapped. Mom and Dad criticize my career choices, and now you're criticizing my boyfriend. I'm 32 years old. I can manage my own life. We'd parted on tense terms, with Amanda refusing my offer to drive her home. Scott is picking me up, she'd said coldly. Could that minor disagreement have escalated to this? It seemed impossible. Yet something had happened with Amanda's lease, and somehow I was being blamed. As we paid our bill, I thanked Amy for making our unexpected Christmas meal special. Family complications, she asked knowingly as she handed me the receipt. You could say that, I admitted. Been there, she said with a sympathetic smile. Families are complicated. But you're doing right by these kids, and that's what matters. Her words gave me a small measure of comfort as we headed back to our apartment, where I would need to figure out what had really happened with Amanda's lease while somehow salvaging Christmas for my children. Back at our apartment, I tried to create some normalcy for the kids by suggesting they play with their new Christmas gifts while I made a few calls. Emma set up her art supplies at the kitchen table, and Jake sprawled on the living room floor with his dinosaur encyclopedia, occasionally calling out fascinating facts about velociraptors. I retreated to my bedroom and called my friend Tyler, who worked in real estate law. It was a long shot that he'd answer on Christmas, but to my relief he picked up. Bryan, Merry Christmas, man. Everything okay? I explained the situation as succinctly as possible. That's bizarre, Tyler said. You definitely can't just cancel a lease as a guarantor without the primary tenant's consent. There's a legal process. Either there's a major misunderstanding or something fishy is going on. Is there any way to contact someone at the property management company today? I need to figure this out before my family completely excommunicates me. Tyler thought for a moment. My colleague Jessica handles some cases for Windy City Properties. If that's the management company, I might be able to get her to make a call. It is Windy City Properties, I confirmed, feeling a spark of hope. Any help would be appreciated, Tyler. While waiting to hear back from Tyler, I started my own investigation. I opened my laptop and searched through all emails and documents related to Amanda's lease. There was the original lease agreement I'd signed as guarantor 4 months ago, but nothing about termination. I checked my spam folder and trash, finding nothing. Then a notification popped up, a forward from my rarely used Yahoo account that I'd set as a backup email. The subject line read, Confirmation. Lease termination request. I opened it immediately. The email confirmed that a request had been submitted to terminate the lease for apartment 3B at 1750 West Greenleaf Avenue, Amanda's address. The request had come from amandalcoleman@gmail.com but had been processed because the guarantor information was correct. What caught my eye was a line at the bottom. This request was submitted from IP address 17258221163 on December 23 at 9:17 p.m. I had no idea what Amanda's IP address would be, but I knew I hadn't submitted this request. I took screenshots of everything and forwarded the email to my primary account. My phone rang. It was Tyler. Jessica came through, he said. She contacted the night manager at Windy City. They received a cancellation request through their online portal 2 days ago. It came from Amanda's email address, but the authentication was tied to your guarantor information. They processed it without question because it appeared legitimate. Can they reverse it? I asked. Possibly, but they need to investigate first. The manager is sending you the logs. They'll show exactly what information was used to authorize the cancellation. I thanked Tyler profusely and checked my email. Sure enough, there was a message from Windy City Properties with the access logs attached. The cancellation had been initiated using Amanda's email but authenticated with my date of birth and the last 4 digits of my social security number, information that was in the original guarantor paperwork. But the IP address matched the one in the forwarded confirmation, definitely not from my home or office. I needed to talk to Amanda directly. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message explaining what I'd discovered and asking her to call me back urgently. The kids were getting restless, so I called another friend, Lisa, who lived in the building. Her daughter Zoe was in Emma's class. Any chance the kids could come play with Zoe for an hour or so? I asked after explaining the basics of the situation. I need to run an errand and it's too cold to drag them along. Of course, Lisa said. We're just hanging out watching Christmas movies. Bring them over. After getting the kids settled at Lisa's, I drove to Amanda's apartment in Rogers Park. My plan was simple. Wait for her to come home from our parents' house and talk to her directly, showing her the evidence I'd gathered. Without the family audience, maybe she would listen. As I pulled up to her building, I spotted a familiar car, a black Audi that I recognized as belonging to Scott, her boyfriend. He was outside the building, smoking a cigarette and talking on his phone. I parked across the street and observed for a moment, debating my approach. Scott finished his call and was about to head inside when I got out of my car and called his name. He turned, surprise registering on his face before he composed himself. "Bryan, what are you doing here?" "Looking for Amanda," I said, walking closer. "There's been a problem with her lease." A flicker of something, alarm maybe, crossed his face. "Yeah, terrible situation. She's at your parents' place now, pretty upset about it all." "Interesting thing," I said, keeping my tone conversational. "The lease was canceled from her email account but not by her. And definitely not by me, despite what everyone seems to believe." Scott shrugged. "Sounds like a computer error or something. These property management companies are always screwing things up." "The thing is," I continued, "it wasn't a computer error. Someone deliberately logged in and requested the cancellation. The property manager confirmed it." Scott took another drag of his cigarette, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "Well, good luck figuring it out. I'm heading up to grab some of Amanda's things. She's staying at my place until this gets sorted." That caught my attention. "She's moving in with you. That's convenient timing." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said. "Just that you've only been dating a few months and suddenly she needs a place to live and you're right there to offer one. Look, I'm helping her out in a crisis. Something you clearly know nothing about since you caused it." I kept my voice level. "Except I didn't cause it. And I have proof." I held up my phone with the email showing the IP address. "The cancellation came from IP address 17258221163. Do you know what that is?" Scott's face remained impassive, but I saw his hand tighten around his phone. "No idea," he said. "Why would I?" "Because when I put that IP address into a tracker, it shows it's from a T-Mobile cellular connection in this exact neighborhood. And according to Amanda, you use T-Mobile." This was a bluff as I hadn't actually traced the IP, but Scott's reaction told me everything. "You're reaching, man. IP addresses change all the time." "True," I agreed. "But what's interesting is that the cancellation happened at 9:17 p.m. on December 23rd. And according to Amanda's Instagram, which she updated that night, she was at her office Christmas party until at least 11 p.m. There's a photo of her with her new coworker's time stamped at 10:52 p.m. Scott's jaw tightened. "So what?" "That proves nothing. It proves Amanda didn't cancel her own lease. And I can prove I didn't either, since I was at my kid's school Christmas concert that night. There are dozens of witnesses and plenty of photos." Scott took a step toward me. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Always the perfect big brother, swooping in to save the day." "I just want to know why you do this to Amanda," I said, standing my ground. "Was it to get her to move in with you? To make her dependent on you?" "Amanda needs structure," Scott snapped, his composure cracking. "She's been floundering for months, and your enabling isn't helping. She needs to learn financial responsibility. By making her homeless at Christmas." "She was never going to be homeless," Scott said dismissively. "She has options. My place, your parents' house. The lease cancellation just forces her to make a smart choice instead of throwing money away on rent she can barely afford." "So you admit you canceled it," I said, recording the conversation discreetly on my phone. Scott realized his mistake too late. "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Your phone is probably the source of that IP address, and you just explained your motive. What I don't understand is why frame me for it." Scott's face darkened. "Amanda talks about how judgmental you are, how you didn't like me from the start. It was easy for her to believe you'd retaliate after our argument. So you deliberately drove a wedge between me and my family," I said, anger finally seeping into my voice. On Christmas. Don't act all high and mighty, Scott sneered. Your family was already talking about how controlling and self-righteous you are. I just gave them a specific reason to believe it. I took a deep breath. I'm calling Amanda right now to tell her the truth. Scott's hand shot out, grabbing my wrist. She won't believe you. I shook off his grip. We'll see about that. As I pulled out my phone to call Amanda, Scott's phone rang. He glanced at it, then at me, clearly conflicted about whether to answer. Go ahead, I said. I'll wait. He answered reluctantly. Hey babe, his expression changed as he listened. No, I'm just at your place picking up some clothes, more listening, his eyes darting to me nervously. What manager? Today. I realized the property manager must have returned my call and reached out to Amanda as the primary tenant. Look, it's not what you think, Scott was saying. I was trying to help you make a better financial decision. He winced, holding the phone away from his ear. Amanda, calm down. Let me explain. I could hear Amanda's voice, raised and angry, though I couldn't make out the words. Fine, your brother is actually here right now, Scott finally said, defeated. Do you want to talk to him? He thrust the phone at me. She wants to talk to you. I took the phone. Amanda. Bryan, the property manager, just called me, she said, her voice tight with emotion. They said there's evidence the lease cancellation came from someone using my email but not my usual device. They asked if you or I had shared our account information with anyone else. Did Scott do this? Yes, I said simply. He just admitted it to me. I recorded the conversation if you want to hear it. There was a long silence. Then I'm so sorry, Bryan. We all thought. Mom and Dad were so sure. I know, I said. It's okay. It's not okay, she said, her voice breaking. We treated you terribly. The things we said about you. We can talk about that later, I said. Right now, you need to know that I've already left a message with the property manager. With your permission, we can get this cancellation reversed. Yes, please, Amanda said. And Bryan, thank you for investigating this instead of just getting angry at all of us. As I ended the call, Scott was watching me with a mixture of defiance and wariness. She knows the truth now, I told him. And soon everyone else will too. This isn't over, Scott warned. Amanda needs someone who can guide her to better decisions, not an enabler like you. What Amanda needs is respect and support, not control and manipulation, I replied. Stay away from my sister, Scott. I walked back to my car, already dialing my parents' number. It was time to clear my name and hopefully salvage something of this Christmas day. The drive to my parents' house was tense. I had spoken briefly with my father, who sounded confused by my claim of innocence, but agreed to hear me out. Your mother is very upset, he warned before hanging up. Try not to antagonize her. Typical of my father to worry more about my mother's feelings than the fact that I'd been falsely accused and shut out on Christmas. The kids were still at Lisa's, where I'd called to explain I needed another hour. Take your time, Lisa had assured me. The kids are having fun and you need to resolve this. When I pulled into my parents' driveway for the second time that day, I took a moment to compose myself. I needed to stay calm and present the facts without letting hurt or anger take over. This wasn't just about clearing my name but about addressing the deeper issues in our family, the readiness to think the worst of me, the lack of trust and respect. My father opened the door before I could knock. He looked tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. Come in, he said quietly. Everyone's in the living room. The scene that greeted me was tense. My mother sat rigidly in her armchair, lips pressed in a thin line. Amanda was on the couch, eyes red from crying, clutching her phone, likely from her recent conversation with me. Michael and Jennifer stood awkwardly by the fireplace, and two empty wine glasses on the coffee table suggested Scott had indeed been there earlier. Bryan, my mother acknowledged coolly. Your father says you have something to explain. I remained standing, not waiting for an invitation to sit. I didn't cancel Amanda's lease. Scott did. My mother's eyebrows rose slightly. Scott. Amanda's boyfriend. Why would he do such a thing? To force Amanda to move in with him, I said. He admitted it to me less than an hour ago. I have a recording. I held up my phone. He used Amanda's email but accessed it from his phone, which the property manager has confirmed. He also deliberately framed me, knowing you'd all believe I did it out of spite. My mother looked to Amanda. Is this true? Amanda nodded miserably. The property manager called me. They traced the IP address. It wasn't Bryan. It wasn't me either. It had to be Scott. But why would Scott want to sabotage your living situation? My father asked, genuinely puzzled. Control, I said simply. Scott has been trying to control Amanda since they started dating. This was his way of making her dependent on him. My mother's expression remained skeptical. That seems rather extreme. Are you sure you're not exaggerating, Bryan? You've always had a flair for the dramatic. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Michael went to answer it, returning with Scott, who looked both defiant and slightly nervous. I figured you'd all be talking about me, Scott said, trying for a casual tone. Thought I should be here to defend myself. Amanda stood up. Did you cancel my lease, Scott? Scott's eyes darted around the room. I made a decision that was in your best interest, Amanda. You've been struggling financially. It makes more sense for us to move in together. I was just speeding up the inevitable. By going behind my back. By framing my brother, Amanda's voice rose. I didn't frame anyone, Scott protested. I just knew they'd assume it was Bryan after your argument. It was convenient. My mother interjected. So you admit to canceling the lease without Amanda's knowledge or consent? Scott straightened, seeming to sense my mother might be an ally. I did what needed to be done. Amanda needs guidance. She's not good with financial decisions. I watched my mother's face, wondering if she'd recognize the controlling language, so similar to her own approach to parenting. That wasn't your decision to make, Amanda said firmly. And you let my entire family believe Bryan did something terrible. On Christmas. I was trying to help, Scott insisted. You keep talking about how judgmental your family is, especially Bryan. I thought I was doing you a favor by giving you no choice but to make a smart decision. A smart decision according to you, I pointed out. Taking away someone's choices isn't help, it's control. This is ridiculous, Scott said, his voice rising. Amanda, we talked about moving in together. I just accelerated the timeline. Why is everyone acting like I committed some crime? Because you lied, Michael said, unexpectedly entering the conversation. And you manipulated the situation to turn us against Bryan. I felt a small surge of gratitude toward my brother. At least someone in the family was seeing the situation clearly. Scott turned to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Coleman, you understand, don't you? You've told Amanda for months she should make better financial choices, possibly move back home to save money. I was trying to support those values. It was a calculated move, appealing to my parents' own controlling tendencies. For a moment, I thought it might work. My father looked thoughtful and my mother's expression was considering. But then Amanda spoke up. Stop it, Scott. Stop trying to align yourself with my parents to manipulate me. What you did was wrong. You went behind my back, you lied, and you tried to control my life. We're done. Scott's face darkened. You're overreacting. Once you calm down, you'll see I was looking out for you. I think you should leave, Michael said, stepping forward. Amanda, Scott looked to her, his expression hardening when she shook her head. Go, Scott. I'll get my things from your place tomorrow. After Scott left, an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. I wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired and sad. This wasn't how Christmas was supposed to be. Well, my mother finally said, it seems there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's how she characterized falsely accusing me and turning me away from Christmas brunch with my children. No, Mom, I said quietly but firmly. It wasn't a misunderstanding. You all assumed the worst of me without even asking for my side of the story. You believed I would deliberately hurt my sister out of spite on Christmas, knowing it would affect my own children's holiday. Bryan, my father started in his placating tone, tensions have been high. We jumped to conclusions. Yes, you did, I agreed. But the question is why? Why was it so easy for all of you to believe I would do something so cruel? No one answered immediately. Amanda looked down, Michael shifted uncomfortably, and my parents exchanged glances. Because it fit the narrative you've created about me, I continued. The difficult son who questions too much. The divorced father who must be failing his children. The brother who enables bad decisions rather than enforcing your version of tough love. That's not fair, my mother protested. We've always supported you. Have you? Because from where I stand, you've judged and criticized every choice I've made that didn't align with your narrow vision of how life should be. You criticize my parenting, you make Emma and Jake feel bad about their interests and choices, and you jump to believe the worst about me at the first opportunity. We were upset for Amanda, my mother said defensively. And you couldn't pick up the phone and ask me about it before deciding I was guilty. Before turning away your own grandchildren on Christmas morning. That hit home. My mother's eyes filled with tears, whether from genuine remorse or from being confronted, I couldn't tell. We should have asked you, my father admitted. That was wrong of us. Amanda stepped forward. I'm so sorry, Bryan. I should have called you directly instead of believing what Scott implied. Michael nodded. Me too, bro. I handled it badly. I appreciated their apologies, but one person remained silent. My mother sat straight in her chair, dabbing at her eyes but offering no words of regret. Mom, I prompted gently. Do you have anything to say? She looked at me, her expression a mixture of hurt and defensiveness. I was protecting my daughter. Mothers do that. And what about your son? Your grandchildren? Don't we deserve protection too? You've always been able to take care of yourself, Bryan, she said, as if that explained everything. In that moment, I saw clearly what I'd always felt but never fully acknowledged. In my mother's eyes, I would always be the one who didn't need her as much, who questioned her authority, who found my own path despite her guidance. And she would never forgive me for it. I think it's time for me to go, I said quietly. My children are waiting. Bryan, wait, Amanda said. Stay. Let's salvage what's left of Christmas. I shook my head. Not today. The kids have already been hurt enough. We'll try again another time. As I turned to leave, my mother finally spoke. Bryan, I'm sorry the children were disappointed. That was never my intention. It wasn't the apology I'd hoped for, but it was something. A small acknowledgement that she understood, at least partially, the impact of her actions. I know, Mom, I said. Merry Christmas. As I walked out the door, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The truth had come out, but the deeper issues in our family remained largely unaddressed. Yet for the first time, I had stood my ground without anger or defensiveness, simply stating my truth and maintaining my boundaries. It wasn't the Christmas reconciliation I'd hoped for, but perhaps it was the beginning of something more honest. When I arrived at Lisa's apartment to pick up the kids, she took one look at my face and ushered me into her kitchen while the children continued playing in the living room. That bad, huh? She asked, pouring me a cup of coffee. It's been quite a day, I admitted, giving her a condensed version of what had happened. The truth came out, but I don't think much was resolved with my family. Lisa nodded sympathetically. Families are complicated. My mother and I didn't speak for 2 years after my divorce. Sometimes the people who should understand us the most understand us the least. I thanked her for watching the kids and for her understanding. When Emma and Jake saw me, they ran over excitedly, full of stories about the games they'd played with Zoe. Are we going to Grandma's now? Jake asked hopefully as we walked to the car. I knelt down to his level. Not today, buddy. Grandma and Grandpa had some important grown-up things to take care of. But I was thinking we could go to that restaurant you like, the one with the Christmas decorations, for dinner. How does that sound? His face lit up. The one with the train that brings your food. That's the one, I confirmed, relieved by his easy acceptance. Emma was less easily distracted. As we drove to the restaurant, she asked, Did you fix things with Grandma and Uncle Michael? Sort of, I said, trying to be honest without burdening her. We figured out what happened with Aunt Amanda's apartment. It was a misunderstanding. Did Grandma say sorry for not letting us in? Emma pressed. I hesitated. In her way, yes. Emma considered this. Sometimes people say sorry without using the word sorry. Her insight struck me. At 7, she already understood the complexity of human relationships better than some adults I knew. That's very true, Em. And sometimes that has to be enough. At the restaurant, a festive atmosphere helped lift our spirits. Christmas music played, servers wore Santa hats, and a model train indeed delivered our food, much to Jake's delight. As we ate, I encouraged the kids to talk about their favorite parts of the day so far, trying to shift focus to the positive moments. I liked the pancakes with the reindeer faces, Jake said, dipping a French fry in ketchup. And playing with Zoe's new robot dog. I liked opening presents this morning, Emma added. And I like being here with just us. Her comment surprised me. Just us? You're not disappointed about missing Grandma's brunch? Emma shrugged. Grandma always tells me to sit different or eat different or wear different things. It's not very fun. Her observation hit me hard. I'd been so focused on maintaining their relationship with my parents that I hadn't fully registered how the criticism affected them. Do you feel that way too, Jake? I asked gently. He nodded, suddenly interested in his plate. Grandpa said my dinosaur facts are boring. But they're not boring. They're cool. They are very cool, I agreed, my heart aching. And you know what? It's okay if we spend more time with people who make us feel good about ourselves and the things we love. After dinner, we returned home to finish our Christmas properly. We opened the remaining presents under our tree, watched the Polar Express, and built a blanket fort in the living room where the kids eventually fell asleep. As I carried them one by one to their beds, I reflected on the day's events. Sitting alone with a glass of wine in the quiet apartment, Christmas tree lights twinkling, I allowed myself to feel all the emotions I'd been suppressing for the kids' sake. Hurt at my family's ready assumption of my guilt. Anger at Scott's manipulation. Disappointment that even after the truth came out, my mother couldn't offer a genuine apology. Yet alongside these painful feelings was something unexpected. Peace. For years, I'd sought my parents' approval, tried to maintain family harmony at the cost of my own values, allowed criticism of myself and my children in the name of tradition. Today, I'd finally stood up for what I knew was right, set a boundary, and walked away when that boundary wasn't respected. The next morning, I woke to a text message from Amanda. I broke up with Scott for good. He tried to convince me it was all a misunderstanding. Can we talk later? I owe you a real apology. It was a start. Amanda and I met for coffee 2 days after Christmas. She apologized sincerely, explaining how Scott had been subtly isolating her from family and friends, making her doubt her own judgment. I should have trusted you, she said. Scott kept telling me how judgmental you were, and somehow I started to believe it. That's how manipulation works, I told her. It starts small with plausible doubts, then grows until you question everything you thought you knew. We talked for hours, rebuilding the connection that had frayed. Amanda admitted she'd been afraid to tell our parents she was struggling financially, knowing they would use it as evidence she couldn't manage on her own. They mean well, she said. But their help always comes with conditions. I know, I agreed. The question is, how do we maintain relationships with them while staying true to ourselves? It was a question we couldn't answer in one conversation, but it felt good to acknowledge it openly. My parents were slower to reach out. My father called 2 days after Christmas, his tone apologetic but still defending my mother. She's having a hard time admitting she was wrong, he explained. You know how she is. I did know all too well. Dad, I love you and Mom, but I need you both to understand something. I won't expose Emma and Jake to criticism and judgment anymore, even from their grandparents. If we're going to spend time together, there need to be some changes. There was a long pause. I'll talk to your mother, he finally said. Just give her time. Michael invited us to his house for New Year's Eve, a peace offering of sorts. The evening was awkward at first but improved as the night went on. When Michael pulled me aside to apologize again, I accepted readily. You were trying to protect Amanda, I acknowledged. I understand that instinct. But I should have trusted you too, he said. You've always been the one who sees things clearly, even when the rest of us don't want to. As January unfolded, I focused on strengthening the connections that brought positivity into our lives. I joined a single parents group at the community center where I met others navigating similar challenges. The kids and I started weekly game nights with Lisa and Zoe from upstairs. We volunteered at an animal shelter on Saturdays where Jake overcame his fear of large dogs and Emma discovered a talent for calming nervous cats. My parents remained distant, though my father called weekly. My mother sent cards for the children but made no direct contact with me. It hurt, but I recognized it as part of the process. Real change couldn't be rushed. In late January, Amanda called with news. I got a job offer, she said excitedly. It's with a smaller company but better pay and growth potential. That's fantastic, I said. We should celebrate. There's more, she continued. I told Mom and Dad yesterday. They wanted me to negotiate for more money before accepting. When I said I'd already accepted because the offer was generous and the company culture seemed healthy, Mom said I was settling. And how did you respond? I asked, wondering if the old pattern would reassert itself. Amanda laughed. I told her I appreciated her concern but that I was confident in my decision. Then I changed the subject. Wow, I said, genuinely impressed. How did that feel? Terrifying, she admitted. But also right. Like I was finally the adult in the conversation. As winter turned to spring, small shifts continued. My mother sent an email asking if the kids might visit one weekend. We miss them, she wrote, the closest she would come to an apology. I agreed but went along as a buffer. The visit was pleasant if somewhat strained, but notably my mother made no comments about Emma's latest haircut or Jake's animated descriptions of his dance recital. When Easter approached, my father called to invite us to dinner. Your mother has been doing some thinking, he said carefully. She's been reading about different parenting styles. I think she's trying to understand your approach better. It wasn't a guarantee of change, but it was a step. At dinner, my mother seemed less rigid, making an effort to ask the children about their interests without judgment. When Emma mentioned wanting to try karate, my mother simply asked which dojo she planned to join rather than suggesting a more feminine activity. As summer approached, I began planning a special vacation for Christmas, just the three of us. When I mentioned it to the kids, their reactions surprised me. Can we invite Grandma and Grandpa? Jake asked. I hesitated. Would you like that? He nodded. Grandma gave me a dinosaur book last time. A real one with actual science, not a baby book. Emma was more reflective. Grandma seems less grumpy now. She didn't tell me to sit like a lady or fix my hair. Their observations confirmed what I'd sensed, that my parents were making efforts, however small, to adapt. Perhaps it was time to meet them halfway. That Christmas was different from any before. Instead of the formal brunch at my parents' house, we all met at a cabin in Wisconsin, neutral territory where new traditions could form. There were moments of tension, old patterns threatening to resurface, but also moments of genuine connection. My mother asked Emma about her art projects and actually listened to the answer. My father took Jake sledding without once mentioning that proper sports might build more character. Watching them with my children, I realized something important. The past year had been painful in many ways, but it had also been necessary. By standing firm in my boundaries, by refusing to accept the old dynamics, I had created space for something new to grow. Not perfect, not without challenges, but more authentic and ultimately more loving than what came before. The healing wasn't complete, and perhaps never would be. Family relationships are always works in progress. But I had learned that true love isn't about perfect harmony or avoiding conflict. It's about honoring truth, setting healthy boundaries, and giving people space to grow at their own pace. More importantly, I had shown my children that they deserve respect, that their feelings matter, and that sometimes the family we create through our choices is as important as the family we're born into. As I look back on that Christmas when my mother turned us away at the door, I recognize it as a painful but necessary awakening. It forced us all to confront truths we had long avoided and begin the hard work of building more authentic relationships. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves and those we love is the courage to stand in our truth, even when it's difficult, even when it hurts. Because on the other side of that pain lies the possibility of deeper connection and more genuine love than we ever thought possible. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family for your own well-being or your children's? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more reflections on family dynamics and personal growth. And if you know someone struggling with toxic family relationships this holiday season, sharing this video might help them feel less alone. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is as important as the family you're born into.